Welcome to Good Humans Podcast, Kelsey Waghorn. How you going, Kelsey?
Good, thank you. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. It's been quite a big day. Your episode number 3 recording for me today, but I'm very, very excited to hear your story. It is something unlike any other story I'm sure I've ever heard. And yeah, I'm excited to get into it. But the question I do open every Good Humans podcast with is, what are you grateful for right now in your life?
I'm grateful for the people in my life at the moment. Yeah, I had a pretty bad year last year. So, the people that got me through it, I'm very, very grateful for them every day.
Oh, love that. The people in our life make everything. The connections and the support we have is so important.
It's definitely a make and break sort of situation. So, very grateful for them.
Bloody love that. What we also do open Good Humans podcast with is the sponsor of this podcast, Drink a Repper. That's kind of who's got us here today. We're upstairs from their office. I'm over in New Zealand doing some fun stuff with them, including recording podcasts with legends like yourself. So we're going to pick up our Repper. We're going to open it and we're going to do a Repper cheers to get our brain fired up to...
Look, I'm not going to be able to open mine.
All right, I'm going to swap you. You can have mine. I've drank about 4 of these today, but...
Oh, look, there's worse strengths to drink.
Anyway, cheers.
Cheers.
Bang. All right.
I'm not going to put the lid on.
That was smart. My last guest did that, and I kept having to unscrew mine, but I'm not going to put the lid on this time. So, perfect. All right, let's get into this chat. So, Good Humans podcast, I explained to you a little bit prior to recording. It's going to be a bit of a chronological about your life. We're going to get to know who you are, what your upbringing was like a little bit, how school was, and then we're going to talk about, I guess, the event that changed your life, because...
Which one?
Hopefully there's a couple. We'll learn about them. There's one that you're quite well known for, which was incredibly traumatic for you, but we will catch up to there. Yeah. Maybe we'll let people know at the start what happened on White Island, but we will catch back up to it really quickly. Give me a minute of explanation of how you explain to people what happened on White Island.
So I was a guide for a tour company which took tours around the inner crater of White Island. So that's 50k offshore. I can't remember any of my talks now.
Here in New
It's
Zealand.
been so long. Yeah. So we were walking around the inner crater one day and the island decided to clear its throat and we just happened to be there and
It's a volcano, yeah?
Yeah. So, New Zealand's most active volcano.
Wow. So you were there when it erupted and...
Unfortunately, with 47 people.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, we're going to catch up to that because... I want to learn more about it as much as you're willing to share. But first I want to get to know who you are, why you were walking around a volcano and tour guiding. So let's go.
I'm a moron.
Oh, no, you're not. No, you're not. So let's go back to the start. Where were you born? Where'd you grow up? What was family life like? Let's call up till the start of high school and then we'll talk about high school. Siblings. Yeah, what do I need to know about your upbringing that might help me understand your story a bit better?
So I was born in Palmerston North and lived there till I was about 8 or 9, and then Dad bought a business up in Whakaari, which is in the Bay of Plenty, so about 3.5 hours from here. And
we're in Auckland.
We are in Auckland, yes. We all moved up to Whakaari, which is much nicer than Palmerston North, and basically lived there ever since. School was pretty uneventful in a good way. Didn't mind school too much. Lost a few friends, unfortunately, as you do. Some of them to sickness, some of them to unfortunately taking their own lives. But
Do you have any siblings?
One. Yeah, I have a sister.
Amazing. So let's talk about high school. High school can be quite a tumultuous time for some people. You said it was quite uneventful for you, but you also said you've lost friends to suicide and illness. That's something, to be honest, I've never really lost anyone that I would call a close friend, but I do understand a lot of people do have stuff like that happen to them. But let's talk about high school for you. What was the high school experience like? Were you academic? Were you sporty? What did you think life was going to look like post high school?
I was kind of one of those jack of all trades, master of none sort of people. I had no idea what I wanted to do when I left high school. I was really lucky that I was actually doing a class, which was a marine studies class at high school. And we went over to the Great Barrier Reef and went diving over there for, I don't know how long it was now, maybe a week. So we actually left our final year ball to go over there in the middle of the night and flew over there and were diving for a week and doing research on the reef and stuff like that. And we came back and I was like, I want to do that. I want to do marine something. And so my teacher was incredible, and he was just like, right, I'll sort it out for you. And so basically I came back to him a few days later, and he had like every single university that did some sort of marine course laid out for me, and he was just like, I recommend this one because of this, I recommend this one because of this. And so he went through it all with me, and so I picked the one which was the most practical and ended up doing that.
What was that practical one? And tell me what studying what marine biology was like at university.
It wasn't
marine conservation, or
it was, I think it was just marine science, so it was kind of a taster of all the sciences. So we did biology and God, I can't even think of the other things now.
Chemistry.
All the things, all the sciences.
Yeah.
And so we did that, and I did that for 3 years and came out with a bachelor and a diploma. And I was going to do my master's, but my third year was pretty crap. So I decided not to continue with my studies, and I thought I'll just get a job on a boat. And so that's what I did.
Tell me about the job on the boat. How'd that come about? What was that? What did that involve?
The job on the boat was what I'm now known for.
Okay, so this was on a boat, the exploration.
Yeah. So White Island, it's 50 kilometres offshore, and so you
Where
could
do you
either
leave from? Auckland?
No, Whakaari was where I was working from. I think you could come from Auckland. I think there was a helicopter company that you could come from Auckland. And then so we'd go out to the island and we'd do a tour of the inner crater, and then we'd bring everyone home.
So it's an uninhabited island. It's just an island with a volcano in the middle, and people go for tours out there.
Some gannets there and some mice, maybe some rats, but other than that, no human.
So it's not that big. It's literally just a volcano on an island.
No, now you're really testing my knowledge. Okay. I think it was 2.5K by 2K wide from what you could see. So not
tiny,
not massive, but that's just like the top of it coming out of the water. So yeah, the base of it's like 18 by 16 kilometers. So.
Yeah, but it's just what's underwater.
Yeah.
So how long ago was this?
3.5 years ago was the eruption. So
it wasn't that long ago.
No, so I worked there for 5 years in one day. So literally one day too long.
Tell me about the experience before the eruption. What drew you to that island that you stayed hiding there for 5 years? What were some of the beautiful things about it? What was your experience as a tour guide there like?
Initially, it wasn't the island. I actually couldn't have cared less about the island if I tried. I never was a geology or land-based person. Yeah, so I was like, I just wanted to do the boat thing. So I was just like, I have to do the island because it's part of the job, but I was more like on the boats for as long as I could be every day. And so, like it was about an hour and a half-ish on the boats out, and then an hour and a half back. So, we'd see whales and dolphins, and in summer you'd see hammerheads and manta rays and turtles, and it was just unreal. And like we'd go swimming out at the island, and it was so much fun. And then you just had people there on holiday, and usually we're really nice, and just everyone would be buzzing. And then the island got more interesting for me because I guess we were learning about it while we were there. We're seeing things change, we're seeing things move around, and it was kind of like, oh, this actually isn't lame, this is quite cool. So seeing it for that long and seeing how much it would change and all that kind of stuff, and then talking to geologists and stuff, it was just like, okay, this isn't actually lame, it's actually quite cool. Yeah,
what were some interesting things about the island, and what were some of the things that changed, because you kept saying the word change?
Oh gosh, it's so long now, and so much has happened since that. My brain's like purged a lot of my information.
That's okay.
Need that drink. So because it was a live volcano, so it was always emitting gases, and occasionally would ash, and I think it erupted once in the time I was there, pre the eruption. So in those 5 years, I think it was just the once.
And was that eruption?
It was overnight.
Oh, so it just happened.
So no one was there, and so we basically just got out there the next day, and the island was green, and we were like, "What is happening?"
Green? What do you mean green?
So it was just the ash. The color of the ash had it would have probably started off as grey, but then it just reacted with all the acid and everything, and just made it go green, and so it just looked like this weird rolling hills, like this like weird green space place. It was just bizarre. So
was there always fear that maybe it'll erupt when we're there, if you'd seen in that 5 years it erupt before? Or was there like I
don't think it was a fear, it was like I knew.
Was it a consequence that the participants who were on your tour knew? Was that kind of what drew people to it, like it might erupt when we're there, it's a bit dangerous? Or was it this is a safe tour to go on?
I'm going to say both. I mean, obviously, at the end of the day, it's New Zealand's most live volcano, so it's all kind of in the title. But yeah, I mean, I can't recall other than that eruption ever feeling unsafe being there. There were a couple of times where there was an earthquake, and that wasn't very fun because the whole cliff faces were like sheer rock face, so it was kind of like, well, if it's a big enough quake, then obviously it could shake the walls down. So that was probably the one time I can think of where I was like, oh, that's not good, but it wasn't even volcano related.
Yeah, wow. So what did a tour look like? If you took someone out there, hour and a half on the boat, look at some whales, look at some dolphins, get to the volcano, is there a dock to get off? Then is there trails? And because you said you'd walk around the inside of the volcano.
Yeah.
How does that work?
Yeah, so the whole, where we would go is kind of like this big amphitheatre. And so the island, the top of the island is sticking out of the water. And so we'd basically, one of the walls had come away. And so you could basically get dropped right in the mouth of it. You would then walk around the inner crater of it up to the main crater. Have a look at that.
Could you see like lava and stuff? Like
no, so this one was you'd see just steam coming out of it, and it had a big crater lake which would change colour, and
so it was like a big looked like water in the middle of it.
Yeah.
And then it would
and so that would change,
like,
and
it
then
like a hot spring with like bubbles and stuff coming out of it almost.
Yeah, okay. And so depending on the water level, if it was getting into the main vent, like you get big geysers and stuff like that. So it was pretty cool.
Wow.
Yeah.
All right, let's talk about the day.
Ooh.
As much as you want to share. What can you remember about that day? And I guess can you give me a bit of a run through of the events from what you're willing to recall for us? Because I think it's going to be scary to hear recounted, and I'm sure it's probably a little bit traumatic to recount it for you. But yeah, as much as you're willing to share, I'd love to know what you can remember from that day. How many people were on the tour with you? Yeah,
I pretty much remember more or less everything. But I mean, a lot of it was it was a normal day up until it wasn't. So, we had a group from a cruise ship come across from Tauranga, which is an hour away. So they came across via bus and got dropped off to us, and we all just hopped on the boat and went out to the island as we always did. Got to the island, and we were the third boat of the day.
So there's different tours that go out there too, so a few people.
Yeah, so there'd been a few helicopters out there. We were the only boat company.
So people get helied and dropped there too.
Yeah. So, but yeah, it was a bit more expensive.
Yeah.
We were the cheap option.
I would have been on the boat, don't worry.
Boat's so much more fun. You see so much more stuff.
Absolutely.
Like, the helicopter's cool. I did go around the island, I think twice in a helicopter. It was very cool. And we did get to go to the top, which was very neat, and then look like down into it, which, none of the other crew that I worked with had done that. And so that was quite a fun little bragging right. But yeah, I mean, it was a normal tour. So we got dropped at the wharf. We did the whole first half of the tour all normally. Went up to the crater, saw the crater, came back down from the crater, and we were standing in a couple of streams which come down through the island. And I mean, I just remember people started going, oh, wow, look at that. And it was like all this noise all of a sudden in the terms of people talking, not like volcano noise. I don't know what that is.
Yeah.
So people just all of a sudden started talking while I was kind of saying some spiel about what was in the water and what the water tasted like, and turned around and the island was like full eruption. Like the steam cloud, the smoke cloud, was already bigger than the island, and the island's 321 meters tall.
Wow.
It was already bigger than the island, so it just quietly erupted behind us. And so we just basically ran for cover, and then it all basically turned to shit from there.
So when you say ran for cover, like how far are you from the dock? Can you get in the water and start swimming away from the island, or?
We were way too far inland for that. So it crossed my mind once we'd sort of taken shelter, because where we were in the middle of the island, and these streams were kind of like these big mounds of rock. And so in my mind, the rock wall that we kind of hid behind was like this massive wall. But when we kind of got there, it was like not as big as I thought it was going to be, but that's all right. I mean, you've kind of shortchanged for cover on a volcano. There's not many options.
Was there protocol or anything with your work?
Yeah. So, I mean, obviously this was always worst case scenario. This was like, we did drills on it. We trained for it and everything, but you never think it's obviously ever going to happen
It's
to
like
you.
when they give the emergency thing on an aeroplane.
Exactly. And you kind of go, yeah. And you kind of half take it in and you half don't. And you go, that'll never happen to me. And it's one of those things where it's like, you know it could happen, but you don't believe it will. Otherwise, obviously, you wouldn't be there.
Yeah.
So it was, I don't know whether that's stupid or ignorant or just the way that it is.
Yeah.
But I mean, obviously, we wouldn't have been there if we didn't think it was safe, because why would we do that?
Yeah. So what, you see steam coming out the top? Is it like lava? Everything starts spilling out the top, like a movie kind of?
No.
The way you'd see a volcano eruption, or
No. So it was kind of nothing like the movies. Like there's like Hawaii, the way that it erupts with the big like lava flows. White Island doesn't do that. It's a bit more aggressive. And so instead of like lovely slow lava mooching down the side of the hill, it's like balls of lava being thrown at you. I don't think we had lava thrown at us. I could be wrong. I didn't see any. We did have like rocks and stuff thrown at us, but the majority of the damage that it did was so when it erupted and the whole plume, so obviously you got like rock and ash and debris going up in this big plume, which I think ended up about 2 k's high. I could be wrong. I wasn't measuring it.
Shit out of the...
Yeah, so it's like obviously there's a heap of pressure in behind it, so it throws it all up, and then obviously all that heavy stuff has got to go somewhere. And so as it kind of falls, it creates what's called a pyroclastic flow. And so I'm probably going to get this wrong. So if there's a geologist or volcanologist listening, correct me. But basically as it falls out of the column, it creates this big wave. And so if you ever watch a video of it, you can see the big plume, and then all of a sudden there's this massive wave of cloud that comes out at the bottom. And so that's what did all the damage for me especially.
Yeah, because there was, I'm guessing if it was only 3 years ago, there's probably plenty of phones out filming and stuff, or was it everyone freaking
so a lot
out?
of it.
So how many people did you have with you?
I had a group of 21 of us, including me. So 2 of us were guides, and then there was 19 passengers. And so we took cover, and I mean the worst case scenario was if there's a pyroclastic flow, like I knew the odds of surviving that, and it's basically 0.
Wow.
And it was kind of like, cool, well, we'll just seek shelter, wait for it to chill out, and then we'll get off the island. Looked up, saw the pyroclastic flow coming, it was like, rad, okay, so this is how it ends. So basically it was just like, well, there's nothing we can do here, it's just a matter of waiting it out. But somehow managed to pop out the other side, and it was like, right, let's go, and basically made everyone get up and keep walking.
Did everyone survive that was with you?
So of the 47 that were on the island, 22 have died. One of them only died a couple of years ago, and I'm not sure if it was from complications from what happened or whether it was unrelated. But so the death toll for it is 22 at the moment.
Wow.
Yeah.
So once it's erupted, it's exploded, is that, so you've got like basically hot rocks and water and steam kind of just
it was
raining down on you kind of thing?
I don't remember. I imagine there still was stuff coming out of the sky from the videos I've seen from, because we were quite lucky. So we'd just got to the island. Another group had just come off the island, and they were circumnavigating the island. And so they had just got around the other side of the island, and basically it erupted. So they came back to check on us. And so they came back basically and got back into the bay that we get in on as we were coming out of the island. So I'd managed to get my group moving fast enough to basically get there as the boat was getting there, which was good. And then so we basically got put on that boat, because the boat we came out on got hit. So it was covered in ash. So if they turned it on, basically it would just suck all the ash into the engine, and it would seize the engine. So we got put on the other boat with the other passengers, and got home that way. My group did.
Wow. So was there quite a lot of severe injuries in your group? I mean, for anyone who can't see, you've obviously had some severe burns on your arms and stuff. What was that like? I mean, I don't know how much you want to talk about that, but I just feel like it might paint the picture a little bit for what the recovery looked like for you. Was it just blood and injuries everywhere, or just burns? And
I only remember my injuries, because I kind of, once we got off the island, it was just like, right, I'm not your guide anymore. I'm just trying to survive.
Yeah.
So it was, once we got on the boat, we had other people, the other passengers looking after us basically, which was incredible for them to do. They didn't have to, but they did.
So that was the people who come around the side. They didn't cop the injuries like you guys.
No, so they were still on the boat, and so they were fine. So they managed to avoid the pyrocaustic flow as they're coming back around.
Wow.
So there's some pretty amazing footage from the boat of basically them racing around the side of the island as the pyrocaustic flow is coming towards them. And so we got popped on that boat, and I just remember it just when my hands were melting, and I was just like, this ain't good. But it was like, not once did it cross my mind that it was life-threatening. It was like, well, the thing that was supposed to kill us didn't kill us. So it was like, we're sweet, something, they'll fix it somehow.
Yeah.
So it never crossed my mind after that things were like that serious.
So with what caused your burns? Is it from lava or
no? So
or is it because it's so hot from the explosion that probably even the air that comes from the hieroglyphic flow or whatever could head around. It's fucking crazy.
So I say we're lucky that it was chemical burns, purely based on the fact that like pyrocaustic flows can be 500 600 degrees Celsius. If we'd had that kind of burning,
instant death.
And I mean like because my uniform was basically plastic, so it just would have melted to us, and I mean the survival rate probably would have been a lot lower. But the good thing about chemical burns is it was basically just anything that was exposed skin wise, the acid in the air reacted with the water in the skin and basically just liquefied it.
So it's acid in the air from the thing.
So I think I'm probably hopefully not going to get this wrong. I think it was hydrofluoric acid.
Yeah, hydrochloric?
Fluoric.
Okay.
Yeah. So I say we're lucky it was chemical burns because it meant that it was just the skin that was exposed. So for me it ended up being 45% burns. So it's basically fingertip to t-shirt line, on both arms, short line to boot line on both my legs, and then my bag pulled my shirt up, and so now I have a tramp stamp of grafts on my lower back. So yeah.
What about your face? How did your face not get affected?
That's been a hotly debated topic ever since I got out of hospital, and because a lot of the others ended up with quite severe burns on their face and even their necks. I was lucky. I had so we all had helmets on, we all had gas masks. I had my sunglasses, and so basically I just put my gas mask on, my sunglasses on, and just thought, well, if I've got any hope in getting off this island, I gotta be able to see and I gotta be able to breathe. So it was just basically press the sunglasses and gas mask to my face as hard as I could and so I wasn't even trying to protect the skin. It was more like I just gotta be able to see and breathe. And so in basically covering my face with my hands, I managed to protect my face.
So are the gas masks there as a precaution? If
not for that.
No, what are they for? Do you put them on when you're up in the volcano because there's chemicals in the air?
And so there's sulfur dioxide was the gas that was coming out of the island, and so it kind of would just be like this real sort of sharp, acidic-y kind of like you breathe and it would kind of like take your breath away. You kind of just like your breath would catch in your throat and you start coughing sort of thing. So you put the gas mask on and it had like an acid filter through it, which would help people breathe. And so it basically just stopped things getting in us. Wow.
Thank you so much for sharing, because I can imagine it's so traumatic to have to relive that. And I'm sure there's been lots of questions asked to you and over the years, and I'm grateful that you're willing enough and open enough to share. But this is a part of the story that I'm most intrigued about, the recovery. And this is where I think people are going to be able to relate to your story, be it overcoming adversity and being resilient through these difficult times. So you get off you got an hour and a half on the boat on the way home. Talk about that journey.
Longest hour of my life.
I bet. Just excruciating pain.
Yeah, so the eruption was like 2 minutes. I thought it was like 10, but it was like less than 2. I thought that was a long time, but that boat ride, that just seemed, it was like we were on a treadmill and we're going nowhere. It was just like, come on. So
is there emergency services like on their way out to help you? Like, what was
so that's
response like?
A lot of things did and didn't happen with the response to that. Some of my friends who worked as tour guides and pilots for helicopter companies, they were actually the ones that came out to help us. So they did pull people off the island. The authorities deemed it too unsafe to go, so no one actually officially went out there other than a bunch of my mates, tour guides, who were basically
legends.
like, we're just gonna go check on our mates, and basically pulled.
And they save a few lives, I'm guessing.
They did, yeah.
Good
so they're amazing, but
Goosebumps.
yes. So they did an amazing job, and yeah, they were the only response that we got basically.
Wow.
But when the boat got back to the mainland, so back to Whakatane, we had almost every ambulance, fire engine, police officer waiting on the wharf for us. And as we pulled in, I remember seeing my mum and my sister, and I think it was my nana, standing on the wharf. And because I'm looking at my arms,
because then they didn't know who's passed away. Was there a few people that just
they knew?
Was there many in your group that passed away, or was there?
Not that I'm not group? Then that I know of. I don't think anyone died on the boat on the way home.
So had anyone died at that stage? Like, did anyone get left behind on the island?
So there were 3 groups of us. Okay. There was 2 groups from the boat, so my group and my friend Hayden's group, and then there was a helicopter on the island, and so that was a group of 4 plus the pilot.
Yeah.
My group and the helicopter group came back on the boat, and most of Hayden's group didn't make it off.
So
yeah,
I'm sorry you have to kind of relive and explain that to me, but I just think it shows the significance of how scary that event and what that was. So let's talk about now. You get off the boat, your family's there. You touched on briefly that you didn't understand the consequences of how bad your injuries were.
Yeah.
I'm guessing that means that you got to the hospital and you had a probably different story than you were maybe expecting in your head.
Well, the hospital kind of got inundated. So all of a sudden they had 30. So how many? Yeah. About 30, I'm going to say. Burns victims all of a sudden were just being like, so the A&E basically, it was us and there was no one else that was allowed in. And so I don't remember a lot from there because it was basically as soon as they came in, it was just like, give them any pain meds they need. And so I was speaking to one of the ICU nurses from there, and he was saying like they used about 100, I hope I'm allowed to say this, it's too late now.
You'll be right.
They used 100 syringes of morphine on say 30 of us. I think some people did die in Whakatane Hospital. I might be wrong. But basically with the morphine, the syringes, I think they said that anything more than 1 can kill you. And if you do the math, we were having more than 3 each.
Just because of the excruciating pain.
Yeah, and it was basically just load them up. And it was just,
because they couldn't work on everyone straight away. There was people in beds in pain.
And like...
Fuck, that must be hard if you're a doctor or at work in the ICU to like, who do you choose to...
Yeah, and like they were basically, it was every doctor, anyone in the DHB's phone book basically. So it was like engineers, receptionists, like GPs, like literally anyone in the DHB's phone book was called. And so there's engineers holding like fluid bags. There was like... Wow. There was just like every hands on deck. Like it was just everyone, and it was like from like an hours away was like the circle, and everyone just got called in, and so it was like everyone who knew anything to do with like medical was there. Wow. And so and then because obviously like looking at my arms and stuff, like where do you put lures, like how do you get the pain medication in, and so like trying to find a vein and like that kind of stuff. Like I have no idea where they put them. Like I probably don't want to know.
Wow.
So I don't remember a lot from Whakatane Hospital because once they started doping us up, it gets a bit fuzzy. And then I was transported from Whakatane to the bottom of the North Island down to Wellington.
Yeah.
So I was in Heart Hospital, and basically the next thing I remember is waking up from a coma 5 days later.
Wow.
Yeah.
I'm just like flabbergasted by your story. I'm sure looking over at the producer, he's doing the exact same thing right now. I'm just like, I feel terrible kind of making you relive this, but
I'm kind of lucky. Like I've talked a bit about like PTSD and stuff.
Yeah, that's where I want to get up to.
But thankfully for me, there's kind of a weird sort of detachment from it, and so talking about it actually does nothing.
Okay.
Like, well, maybe it does, but I can talk about it quite freely and quite openly, and it freaks more people out than it does me. So I'm grateful for that because it means I can talk.
From it
It's probably not a good thing.
I mean, if that's your way of dealing with it, then hey, it's a great thing.
Keep it at arm's length. So I mean, it's good because it means I can talk about it. So like, with like psychologists and anyone that's trying to help me, it's just like, well, what happened? And it's not like I can't talk about that. It's like, well, let me tell you in HD what happened. And they're like, oh my God.
I'll tell you what's not funny, but we literally I did a podcast the episode before with a human performance specialist, and he was quoting a study from a PTSD study where they put MRI scans on people while they recited their trauma. No, where they had to write their trauma down and they had to like read it, and the part of the brain that is our speaking part of our brain would switch off for trauma patients, for PTSD patients. So you're like, you must be an outlier. That's what he said, yeah. It's super interesting. We have a PTSD, patient that comes in straight at the next podcast, and you just debunked it. Oh, you're an outlier. But let's
I'm an oddity.
Yeah, we love that. So let's talk about the recovery now. 5 days in a coma. You're in Wellington Hospital. What was the first thing the doctor sort of said to you? Because this is another thing that I find really interesting. I had another guest on early this morning who broke his neck, and there's all different things that doctors say to people when they're in a really traumatic situation. What was your experience like with the doctors?
I don't remember a lot from ICU. What I do remember apparently didn't happen. For example, when I was being taken to surgery, I went through a cheese waterfall. Apparently that didn't happen. Might
have been the morphine or the ketamine or whatever they put you on.
It was a lot of ketamine.
A lot of ketamine?
Yeah.
We love that.
Yeah. But yeah, now when I have surgery, I'm like, don't give me ketamine.
No more cheese waterfalls.
Yeah, and then you hear like on the news people are taking ketamine, and I'm like, why? Why would you do that to yourself voluntarily? So I don't really remember much from ICU. The first thing I remember is my dad's voice, which was nice, but also when they woke me up, the doctor came in and they were like, right, well, we're going to start waking her up.
Had they done skin grafts and stuff by then?
They'd done my arms.
So that was the 5 days of the coma they were working on you with surgeries and stuff?
Yeah. So basically as soon as I hadn't even got in the door, and basically I got swooped into surgery. So like debriding and all that kind of stuff. So basically just like taking off all the burnt skin. And then I can't remember what I was talking about.
That's right. You're talking about you heard your dad's voice and it was scary, but
because the doctor had said it takes about 20 minutes for them to start waking up. So he said, I'll go check on someone else. I'll come back. Literally as soon as he left the room, he like disappeared into thin air, and I woke up. And so the nurse was, one of the nurses like took off to go find him, and I've still got the tubes down my throat because they like to wait until you're like proper awake, because if you don't come out of it or something goes wrong and they put you back under, they go put the tubes back down. And so they try and put tubes down while you're freaking out, and so they're just like, we'll leave them down as long as we can. And so when I woke up, because I had all this like shit on my face to try and like deal with the burns on my face, and so it was all in my eyes. My eyes have been closed for 5 days. I was on so much drugs, it was basically like chameleon eyes are going in different directions. And there was this orange haze, and so all I could see was this orange glow, and I thought I was in a tent, and I couldn't breathe, and I could hear my dad just telling me it's okay, like the doctor's coming, and I was just like, I can't see, I can't breathe, I was like, I can't move, I was like, I don't know what's going on, so like freaking out. And then I don't remember the tubes coming out, and then I just remember all sorts of weird stuff going on for the next sort of 2 weeks. And then once I got up onto the ward, the sort of medication started being reduced, and I started becoming more sane, which was nice. And then that was like my first proper like
conversation with the doctor, and
I was just like, I've never met you, and they're like, we've been here for 3 weeks.
We're best friends.
It's like, I know you intimately. It's like, nope, we've never met. So it was real weird. And then even like, because I wasn't really that lucid in ICU, and then when I got moved to the ward, I'd have like the nurses come up to check on me from ICU, because like this is a bit of an oddity with the volcanic eruption, thankfully. So they come up and be like, hey, like, how are you doing? And I'd be like, who are you?
Everyone would have known about your story.
Exactly. Yeah, and like all these nurses are coming, like all these strangers were coming in, and they're like, we just wanted to see how you're doing. I'm like, thanks. That's so kind. And they're like, oh, we were your nurses in ICU. I'm like, oh, okay, not weird. Okay. So that took a bit of getting used to. But yeah, the recovery was probably worse than the burns.
Really?
Yeah, the physical recovery was pretty grim. At least with the burns, I guess you kind of almost get cauterized.
Yeah.
So you kind of maybe don't have a lot of feeling. Like
Yeah,
there was a lot of feeling.
And you'd be in shock, and
yeah,
it'd just
exactly.
be like there'd be so much adrenaline running through your body.
Yeah, but then like in hospital, like they had removed all the burnt skin, and then they have to put good skin on. So they basically all my good skin they took off me and put it on the areas as skin grafts. So like all the areas that I managed to not get burnt were suddenly now being stripped for skin, and it was just like now I have my entire back side is like raw. Plus I have all these like skin grafts on my arms, and then they had to do my legs, and so they had to like skin it again. And yeah, so that was pretty grim. That was some very dark days when they did my legs when I was up on the ward.
Yeah, how long were you in hospital for?
They estimated 6 months to my family early on if I made it, and then
So it's still quite dangerous doing skin grafts and stuff for infection.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I got pretty much everything that they said that was I was a high risk for. I had happen. So blood clots, infection. They did say that it's common for skin grafts sometimes not to take. So there was that risk. And when they first did my legs, and I was in like agony and like begging to go back in a coma. And the first dressing change they did, they were like, the grafts aren't taking. We're gonna have to do this again. And then, so my family was all devastated. I don't remember them telling me. They may have done, and I might have just blocked that out and pretended it wasn't happening. But then the next dressing change, they were like, they've all taken, we don't know what's happened. So that was good. So didn't have to go through that again. Yeah.
So you said initially they predicted 6 months. How long were you actually in there for?
70 days.
Oh, good on you. Quick.
Yeah, so I think it's about 2.5 months. So yeah, pretty good.
What was the post-hospital recovery like? Because I can imagine that would have been tough.
Yeah, coming out of hospital where it's like all safe and everyone's watching out for you, and it's all kind of very controlled environment, felt very safe. So it took me a long time to even stay out of hospital when I was allowed. They're like, you can go stay with your family in the motel. I'm like, no, I'm safe here.
So you stayed in hospital for a bit longer than you?
Yeah, and then when I got transferred from Hutt Hospital up to Waikato University Hospital.
So that was close to where you lived?
Yep, so that was my regional.
Yeah.
Where was I going?
So they moved you up to the hospital. So were you 70 days in the Wellington hospital and then you got moved?
No,
so total once you got moved?
End of January I got moved up to Waikato. So, and I should have really only been there a couple of days, but I had a bit of a whoopsie and fell over, took the grafts off my legs.
Oh no.
And so they made me stay for another 2 weeks. And then 3 days after I got discharged, passed out in the shower and took them off again. Oh. So my nurses were just like, they were just like, you can't leave. You can never leave. I was just like, I'm out of here. Bye.
Wow. So that's pretty much, I guess. This is like the start of COVID 3 years ago?
Yeah.
And so this was January 2020, you just out.
Yeah.
Then COVID hits.
Yeah. So I was discharged on the 13th of February 2020.
All right, I'm on my recovery. Let's get back into life.
Well, I managed to, because I didn't want to, because the media was like piranhas around it. So I was like, I hid kind of under the radar. I didn't tell anyone I'd been discharged. Like even like some family still thought I was still in hospital. And then a month after I was discharged, I said that I was home. And all of a sudden everyone was just like, we want to talk to you. And then it was just like, oh, lockdown, sorry. So it worked out. I was stoked. I loved lockdown, the first one especially. I was just like, I don't have to see anyone.
Yeah, a bit of time to heal. And
just kind of.
Everyone else isn't working. You're probably like, sweet. And then the government started like paying everyone. Did you guys start getting like, ours was called JobKeeper, but did you?
I didn't.
You didn't?
Because I didn't have a job. But in New Zealand we have a thing called ACC.
That's what my other friend Brad was talking about this morning. Workers' comp from or does it not include that because
compensation
of
something or other? Yeah, basically if you get injured at work, they'll pay 80% of your wage until you get back on your feet. And so
they seem to have a really good system with that here in New Zealand.
It's very good.
It's amazing. After speaking to Brad Smeal, who anyone listening might have been a previous or potentially very soon guest to come out. He was like overseas and had something happen, and because of a few loopholes he had all of his American fees paid and he didn't have insurance.
ACC is like
Good on 'em.
massive blessing. Like,
Yeah.
like you hear people complain about it all the time because they didn't get this or didn't get that, and it's just like, be grateful. Like, they do some great work. I would be screwed without it. Like, I would hate to think what my medical bills would be, and I've still got a surgery to go. So yeah.
Talk me about the rehabilitation, because obviously COVID, you're probably going to go to physiotherapy and stuff, or
So I had physio.
Like, does it affect your muscles, like the skin grafts, and like affect everything?
Because I didn't walk for, must have been a good month. So basically just all the muscles atrophied, and they atrophy fast. I remember the first time I saw my arms, it was like, did you liposuction every single muscle out of my arms? They were just like, it was like skin over bone. It was just the most wild thing. And yeah, for the longest time, it was just like a little skeleton, and it was just like, this is weird. Like,
so it's about trying to put weight back on, and
and because your metabolism and everything's like healing as fast as it can, and it's just going pretty fast, and so it's basically just trying to heal, and so everything was in like overdrive for months, and so they had to put muscle back on, and then you had to like stretch all the skin out. That was pretty gross. So all the skin grafts that they put on, because they put them on when you're like, I assume I was lying like a starfish when they were putting them on. And then obviously because they're straight, and then they they bandage you up and you're kind of straight, and then when you get out of the bandages, they're like, right, now you get to stretch the skin.
Wow.
And so it's just like, now I know what sausage meat feels like, and it's not very good.
Oh, is that what made you go vegetarian?
No, I was vegetarian from like 11.
Okay.
So but that would do it.
Wow. I read in an interview that you did that the physical rehabilitation was massive, but the mental health kind of rehab was something that you found quite difficult. Do you want to talk me through that? What did you find difficult?
I guess like people kind of talk about, you kind of hear about people with like PTSD and like you hear about it in like films and stuff like that, and you think of, I guess, like a war veteran just being really angry, and you kind of just don't really think much about it. And sort of my family have been told quite early on, like, she's probably gonna have issues with this later on, but I don't think we quite anticipated what that would look like, and it kind of crept up, and all of a sudden it was like, just as the physical stuff started to go really well, like making gains and like being able to like move and slowly getting muscle mass back, and being able to like do some stuff for myself, it was like my brain was like, right, now that you're in a good place, let's deal with the mental side. And it was like, please don't. And so basically Pandora's box just got opened, and it was just like so unexpected, and it would just creep into every aspect of my life, and it was like putting a blot of ink in a glass of water, and it just took over, and it just was in every aspect of my life. And
in what way? As in, like, you're getting angry easily, you're agitated, you couldn't focus.
Yeah, pretty much. Like, if you look up the symptoms for PTSD, it was like I pretty much ticked every single box.
Wow.
So you're like the hypervigilance, that's exhausting. So just always basically just like on the lookout for danger, that's exhausting. And then obviously when
Nightmares?
you get in, I didn't really have any. That's probably the one thing I haven't touched wood.
Yeah. Keep it up.
I can probably count on one hand how many nightmares I've had in the last 3.5 years.
Wow.
And I can think only 2 of them were actually White Island related, and they weren't actually related to what actually happened. It was just other random scenarios that my brain had brought up. So that's probably the one I haven't had, thankfully. But yeah, like the hypervigilance, the anger, can't concentrate, can't focus, just like don't trust anyone or anything, just
on
edge.
You were never like that before?
Not like this. This was just like I had no idea, and it kind of I kind of got some bad psychological advice as well, and then basically it all fell apart, and I just got tired because I've been healing for 2 years, and I was just tired. Like, I was tired of the physical rehab, I was tired of the surgeries, I was tired of trying to like keep my mind in check, and I was just so tired. And so I just thought, bugger this, I'm gonna have a break. And yeah, you can't do that.
With the physical stuff.
Yeah, all the mental stuff. Like I
Yeah.
was just like, I'm just going to have a break. I'm just going to take a bit of time off. I'm not going to do any work on myself. I'm going to just exist.
So you were seeing like a psychologist and everything along the journey,
Yeah.
but what you just went, you know what, I need a break.
Yeah.
And what that was
And
a bad bit of advice.
Yeah, or because I in one really particularly bad day, I was just like, is this it? Like, is this what I have to live with for the rest of my life? And she said, yeah, it is. And I
There's that
don't
bad doctor's advice I was talking to you about before.
I don't think it was meant the way it came across. I think it'll be there to an extent, but I don't think she maybe meant, now in hindsight, I don't think she meant this extreme. But I took it in that very low moment as, this is it, mate. So I was just like, fuck this. Like, I'm done. Like, what's the point in fighting this if this is as good as it gets? Like, why am I wasting my time, my energy in this? So I just stopped. I just basically, stopped. And so the PTSD basically took the wheel and just took over, and I just became this black thundercloud of just anger, and I was just scared all the time, and just basically just this horrible person. Lost 2 relationships that meant a lot to me, because they just had enough, and fair enough. You can't take time off for this, unfortunately. It is something you have to deal with. Unfortunately, after that kind of slap in the face, it made me realize that, you can't just stop. You just have to keep going. And so it was like, you can take a break, but you can't stop. And I'd stopped. I'd stalled and gone backwards. So, after 6 very horrible months last year of trying to get my shit together and get through that, thinking I wasn't actually going to make the end of the year, I'm still here.
Yeah. What changed?
A year on.
What changed for you?
I found help that actually helped. So that took a lot.
Psychologist or
changed my psychologist to someone who had a lot more psych
with PTSD.
A lot more PTSD experience, because unfortunately, I think, I'm not saying this is a blanket thought, but this was my kind of experience. No psychologist is going to tell you that they don't have trauma experience, because to an extent they all do. But it's a matter of finding the one that has the right level of trauma experience that can deal with you. And I unfortunately learned that the very hard way. So now I have a psych who is a lot better trauma informed. A friend of mum's, she met at a conference and was like, oh my God, your wife does this. And he was like, yes, she might be able to help Kelsey. And so that I basically got put onto her, and she's got some massive clinical name I can never remember the name for, but it's basically a trauma-informed wellness coach. So she's got all the trauma, basically information of a psych without the title of a psych, but does trauma-informed like yoga, gratitude, meditation,
approaches.
Just the holistic stuff, all the woo-woo stuff that people kind of go, oh, it's just happy shit. Like,
I love the woo-woo stuff. Don't worry, that's what I teach.
But like, if you don't know what it's actually about and you've never had it applied in the right way, it does seem...
Exactly.
And you're like, nah, it's just happy shit. Like, there's no way that actually, like, does anything. Got put onto her, found an exercise I actually liked. I don't like exercise, and I found an exercise that I fell in love with. And
what's
that
the exercise?
helped. Reformer Pilates.
Ooh, it's hard.
It's so hard.
It's so fucking hard. The little pulses and shit suck.
I know, you just want to die, and it
But
feels like your muscles are ripping off the bone, and you're just like, I hate this, and then you leave. I'm like, I survived. Maybe that's why I like it. So found an exercise I actually liked, which was massive and actually getting me to move my body, because like when I say I stopped trying, I literally just stopped trying.
Netflix.
Yeah, just basically shut down. The Reformer Pilates then led into trying like bar, and then I ended up trying boxing, and so now I'm doing that and yoga. So I'm doing like all this physical stuff.
Awesome.
So physically probably getting back to where I was pre-eruption, and then mentally finally have people in my corner that have the right tools to help me get through it all. So mentally I'm probably in a better space than I was even maybe pre-eruption. So still have my days where I kind of want to just not do life, but
I think we all do.
That's true. That's not isolated to trauma, unfortunately. That's just life. And So yeah, get in there.
Well, it's so cool to like, I mean, not cool, but just it's so great to see you back at this state where you're happy to live again. You're excited about life. Just quickly, because I feel like you mentioned you lost 2 friends that were quite close to you, and it was probably your fault with the PTSD. But I think that's because they didn't have the skills or the probably understanding on how to not deal with you, but how to understand and probably empathize with you.
And I mean, dealing with that from a friend perspective, like,
yeah, what advice do you have for someone if they've got a friend who has gone through something quite traumatic, whether it be a partner passing away or, you know what I mean, trauma comes in many ways. What would be some advice to someone who has someone in their life who has had some trauma? How would it best to support them?
I mean, as best as you can, don't give up on them, because it just digs the hole deeper. Because, I mean, that's what happened with me last year. It was like I knew I was bad, but then it was like the double loss of the 2 relationships. It was just like, well, fuck this. Like,
so you guys are giving up on me. I'm going to give up on myself too.
Yeah. And so I was just like, no, I'm done. And so I just was just like, no, I'm done. And I called my mum, bawling my eyes out. I'm like, I can't do this anymore. And she was just like, excuse me, because she's at the other end of the island. She's like, why are you doing this from so far away? That's not what she said. I just like to clarify that. Shelley's not that nasty. But yeah, basically it was like panic stations for my poor mother from the other side of the island, just being like, how do I save my girl? And basically just all her mates just congregated. And basically,
Takes an army, doesn't it, sometimes?
It certainly does. And you kind of need the tough love sometimes. You, like, being mollycoddled through it, it doesn't actually help. Being told what you want to hear, not what you need to hear, doesn't actually help. Like, it makes you feel nice and cushy in the short term, but it didn't do me any good. I'd rather be told point blank, or you're being a dick. Go take 5. And then it's like, no, I'm fine. It's like, nah, get out. Like, go take a walk, calm down and come back and let's talk about this. Like, I would rather be told that than like, oh, it's okay, it's all right, and like coddle through it. It's like, nah, send me out.
Coddle through and then disappear. It's like,
and it's
let's
just
be
like,
frank with each other.
Yeah, like, and like communication, and like, it's not even just communication, it's, I guess, comprehension as well. And it's actually what you're saying is actually getting across the way that you want it to. Like, because I didn't know what was going on, because I didn't have that knowledge. And that's no excuse. I didn't know what was going on. I didn't have the tools to deal with it. That is just the way that it was. I wanted to know, but I just didn't have the right people in my corner for it. And I mean, yeah, if you don't know, that's fine. You're not expected to be the psychologist for your mate, but yeah, just do what you can to try and stay in the fight with them, because I mean, yeah, it's rough. Like, in your darkest moment, having the people you thought you're going to be in your life for your whole life all of a sudden being like, nah, you're too much, goodbye. Like, it's rough. It's real rough.
I think that's an amazing bit of advice for anyone out there who does have that. Don't give up on your friends.
It's hard.
Try different, and it is, but try different things. Just never give up. It's so important. Last little question I'm going to ask you. What are you up to now? What's going on?
In life.
What's exciting coming up?
I've basically gone the total opposite direction. I don't know if this is healthy or whether I'm just like on another little trajectory of trauma. So I've basically gone the total opposite direction. A year ago I was doing nothing, and this year I'm like, I'm a yes man. So it's just like, I've gone on a trip with 20 strangers to the South Island, and just like hung out with 20 Americans that I've never met before. I applied for this trip to South Georgia through the Antarctic Heritage Trust, managed to get through that somehow, and so now I'm going to a sub-Antarctic island at the end of September.
I saw that. I'm jealous. I want to go to Antarctica.
Honestly, I don't know what I'm up to. And so in 3 weeks I've got a surgery that I've got 11 weeks to heal from before I go on that trip. So I'm really just taking life by the horns now. I've gone the total opposite direction. It might backfire, but at least it's worth giving it a shot.
Hey, look at you, smiling, you're happy, you're laughing, and that's what we have.
It's a laugh from fear.
No, it's an excited laughter that you know there's bigger and brighter and amazing things ahead in your life. But I'm absolutely blown away by your story. I'm so grateful that you could share it with me and the audience. I'm sure everyone listening right now has been touched by your story, your words, and especially I think your recovery. And I think we're all going to have someone in our life, whether it be us or someone close to us or someone we know that goes through a traumatic experience. I think we can learn a lot from your story. So I thank you so much for that. But I do finish every question of Good Humans podcast with the same question. I do finish every question. I do finish every episode of Good Humans podcast with the same question. Should know that by right now, but it's been a long day. You're episode number 3 for me today. But I do finish it with the same question for everyone, and that is, what does being a good human mean to Kelsey Waghorn?
I think it's just a bit of grace and forgiveness. Just like for me, I had a lot of forgiving to do for myself, and just a bit of grace. I didn't know any better a year ago. I was doing the best I could with the tools and the energy I had at the time, which was basically a stick in a sandstorm. So it was like, it was not in a good place. So it was like I had to forgive myself for not knowing better, for not doing better, for not keeping going, for not backing myself. So just forgiving myself for that, and then just grace for everyone else who has put up with me or hasn't put up with me, and just basically just try not to be a dick, really. I guess that's what it all boils down to.
Be a good human, not a dick. Be a good human,
yeah.
There you go. There you go.
Have
you ever thought about public speaking? You speak very well. You got an amazing story to share too.
Oh, thank you. I've been approached by it a few times, but because there's still a few court cases in the mix, and by a few I mean quite a few. It's kind of a bit scary. Yeah. So it's just a bit scary.
Is anyone still going to that island now? It's done.
No.
Never since. Okay.
Yeah, not since. So I have no idea what the future holds for White Island, because I know that there's people that are like, I'll go back. What are the chances? And it's like,
hectic. Maybe helicopter around it. But.
Yeah. And I'm in two minds about it. Like, on one hand, it is incredible. It's beautiful. Like, it made me very happy. But I also know what happens if you're there at the wrong time, and I would not wish this on anyone. So I'm of two minds. On one hand, it's like, if you can be there when you know it's not going to erupt, then fantastic.
Yeah.
But if you don't know, which obviously we don't know, don't do it.
Yeah. Wow. Well, thank you for sharing your story. I'm so glad you survived that excruciating day that many didn't. And thank you so much for sharing it on Good Humans podcast.
Thank you for having me.